Previously on agentpalmer.com, Azura Ghost is the high-stakes trilogy middle book I didn't know I needed, enjoying the fellowship of friends on an extended edition Friday break, and Jason's probably still disappointed in my digital storage solutions, but I'll fix it. This is the Palmer Files, episode 66 with Taylor Shanklin, who is not only a motivational speaker and TED Talk veteran, but also CEO and founder of Barlele, which also happens to make Taylor my current boss. We talk about why I was hired, Taylor's professional journey to founding her own agency, plus discuss creativity, confidence, truth, and much, much more. Are you ready? Let's do the show. Hello and welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Stershik, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 66th episode is Taylor Shanklin. You will soon hear how Taylor and I became acquainted, why she hired me, and how she came to found her company, so I won't spoil any of that here. But what I will tell you is that her TED Talk, Minimize to Maximize, is probably worth your time if you're listening to this podcast, and her podcast, Soar, might be worth checking out if you want even more marketing insights from Taylor and her guests. So those are the additional things you can look up or check out after you hear us discuss in a roundabout way Taylor's origin story, starting with how I came to be in her employ, as well as other topics we cover like being geeky, being involved, being creative, and much, much more. But first, remember, if you want to discuss this episode as you listen or afterwards, you can tweet me at Agent Palmer or this show at The Palmer Files. You can find more information on Taylor at tshank.com, that's tshank.com, or follow her on Instagram at tshanksoars, that's SOARS. Don't forget, you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com, and of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get into it. Taylor, after a very long period of unemployment for myself, you hired me to work at your agency. And I don't usually get the opportunity to have a boss on because actually for the length of this show, I've pretty much never had a boss until you came along. So I can ask this, why did you hire me?
Well, because I wanted to be your boss, clearly.
Well, but I mean, look, I will say this. When we networked, and I don't remember how that came to be, because I'm pretty sure somebody referred me to you.
Yeah, who was it? It was Chris.
I don't know.
I can see his face.
Okay. Well,
someone introduced us. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
said, you should talk to Jason.
Yeah.
He's networking. I think you could give him some helpful tips and information, right? And like point him in the direction of what companies to look at and who to talk to. And I said, okay, cool. I'll talk to this guy.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have a job for you yet then.
No. And then I think one of the random times I was checking LinkedIn towards the end of last year, you were looking for somebody and I was like, I think I could do this.
Yeah. That's what happened. And I had, so I'll tell you, the first time I talked to you, I had just started my agency and it was really just me. Like, I mean, I'm bootstrapping. I didn't have any money to hire anyone yet. And I wasn't yet making enough money or enough sales to bring anyone on. So like I was doing just fine basically as myself and like hiring people on Fiverr and Upwork when I needed a little bit of extra assistance doing like graphics and stuff like that. But when I met you, I did have this thought where I was like, I wish I could hire that guy right now.
Well, I guess it begs this question, though, right? Like, when you started, you were doing well enough on your own. Obviously, you want to grow the business, but did you want it to be what it could be, like adding me and other pieces along the way and making it like a full agency? Or do you want to keep it just, no, it's just Taylor, right? Like you're paying for Taylor, you get Taylor. I'm only going to take what I can. Like when you started, what was the goals change obviously, but when you started, was the goal like, I want to do this me, or I want to build something?
No, the goal was to build something.
Okay.
And the something still continues to evolve, It's easiest, in my opinion, to start as, let me take a step back. I think if you want to really just get started as a consultant and like go out on your own, forge the path, it's easiest to start either in some sort of a freelance fashion with services or as an agency, as opposed to like product and software, where quite frankly, I think you either need a lot of your own money or, to hire developers and things like that, where you need to go out and search for funding. And I didn't want to do that, at least not at this point. Right. And so I thought, I'll start on my own. I'll do the work that I'm really good at. And eventually I'll start to bring in other people to do the other things that clients are going to want and need. But to be honest, at the very beginning, I wanted to build some software. And I wanted to build software that would help small businesses take their brand and their storytelling to market faster in a way other than Canva, a different kind of a way. And that's still on my mind. But right now, we've grown and gotten so much business through just pure services. People saying, Taylor, I need your brain on my brand.
Yeah.
And then me starting to get to a point where I'm like, my brain can't handle all of this. And my brain's not great at a lot of the things that clients come to me and want when it comes to marketing, right? So there are a lot of things in branding and marketing that I'm good at, but it's a huge, vast world. And there's a lot of things that I'm not good at. And that's where I'm like, okay, it's time to start building a team and bringing other people in.
Well, this was one of the reasons that I think you and I hit it off the first time in that first phone call, was because like you admitted that there were things you did not know, which is rare in general. In the world, people are afraid to say, I don't know that, or I can't do that, right?
Yeah.
And
I don't know why that is.
Well,
but,
I see, because I don't see it as weakness. Like, you either have to learn or you just know not to go there, right? Like, I'm not, I'm not going to try brain surgery. And if somebody asks me, like, can you be do you think you could go be an MD? No, I don't think. I know enough to know that that's not something I should attempt, right? Like, but the other thing was, you and I kind of melded on a marketing level for like, it's got to be real, it's got to be authentic, and how much can we do with very little? Because that's my background. It's kind of your background, and it was refreshing to me, because we start that first networking call, and I'm 18 months unemployed, having done nothing but networked and having done nothing but talk to people that have advice to give that probably haven't been unemployed. Like, look, I was unemployed during a pandemic. It's a very different thing, but I was getting the same advice that you would have given me, I don't know, 10 years ago, or like to a senior out of college, right? Like,
from other people?
From other people. And it was so refreshing to just have a conversation. And it wasn't, you weren't being like, well, what have you been doing? You asked that, and you were the only person who said, well, that's good, right? Because everybody else was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm writing, I'm publishing once a week. I'm writing a little bit more than that. I'm publishing once a week, and I'm putting out a podcast every 2 weeks. And everybody else was like, fine, but what have you done for pay? And I was like, well, there's no market right now. Like, what do you mean? What have I done for pay? And you were the one that was like, well, what does that do? Like, what? You were the first person that really talked about transferable skills from the things that I was doing to keep my skills up. And it was so, I don't know, refreshing. I keep going back to as a word, but like, I had been 18 months of like, oh, you should, put on your goals on your resume, or your resume's diverse, that's not good, or your resume's too specific, that's not good. And I was like, none of that stuff is helpful. Like,
yeah. Well, yeah. And a lot of that stuff is just, I think, people checking boxes in the big corporate culture, whereas like I was listening to, what are you capable of? I don't care if you're making money doing it or not. I care if you're good at it. I care if you have a good thought process. I care if you are someone who can challenge me on my thought process. And that's another thing that I liked about you. And I'll give you two things. So one, going back to the very original question, why did I hire you? I think that you came off to me like kind of a Swiss Army knife in marketing. And I think that that's a really valuable kind of a person to have around you when you're running a digital agency that's small and scrappy and bootstrapping, because I'm a Swiss Army knife in marketing. And I'm starting to get to this point where I'm like, I need another me who can kind of do it all, like who gets podcasting, who gets micro video content, who gets, I can get on the phone and you're going to speak reasonably with a client, who can log into a WordPress website and make some changes. Like, I needed someone else and a team of people who can kind of do it all, because our clients come to us, and that's the world of digital marketing. Like, you need people who can kind of do it all, because I'll be on one phone call with one client, and at the beginning of the call, we're talking about one kind of marketing. At the end of the call, they're asking about a totally different kind of marketing. You have to be able to know a little bit about everything. You don't have to be an expert at everything. And that's why we have other people on the team who have expertise. But it was like, I just saw the Swiss Army knife guy and I was like, I need that. By me.
Well, and
by my side.
It was very weird, because for the longest time I applied for things that I don't know, things that I would tolerate. And that usually ended up being me knowing that there was something about it I wouldn't like. Like, when we talked about this, what I'm doing now, it was, what are you comfortable doing and what will you do? And what are you willing to learn? And in a lot of the things I applied for during my time, it was corporate culture the whole way. So it was like, okay, we want you to be a digital marketer, but what does that mean? And then they go through the list of all the things that you need to be an expert in, and I go, that person doesn't exist. And I still apply, because everybody's like, oh, still apply. They know they're not going to get that perfect candidate. But like, I did get to some interviews, and for everybody out there that's like, yeah, they know they're not going to get the perfect client. Yeah, but they're looking really hard for that person, and they're not paying for it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I look now and I go, well, am I where I want to be? I don't know. Because I don't know where I want to be. And you were comfortable with that answer. Very few people were. Like, they're like, well, what do you want to do? And like, I have a job. Like, I mean, at a certain point, we have to feed ourselves, right? Like, we can't just, we're not all independently wealthy. So all of that is a preface to say, like, are you, like, you want to build this agency, but, and we've been working together for months now. So I kind of know the answer to this, but I want to ask anyway, like, you're building an agency. You're also, as a side, building your personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly you're not where you want to be yet.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think that the journey is fun. So I wouldn't say I'm not where I want to be, because I'm actually quite happy with where I am.
Okay.
But at the same time, I just am the kind of person that likes to do different things, and I like to grow my mindset, and I like to expand my thinking, and I like to try different things. And quite frankly, this is a passion of mine, to give people a place to show up and do work that they like and have flexibility and not deal with corporate crap So like.
But you've dealt with that before. Like you are coming at this having, you're the person who backs up your computer rigorously because you had it crash before and lost everything. So like, I don't know, like corporate culture.
I bash my computer? I don't remember doing that.
No, it's a metaphors. Like I guess knock on wood that it doesn't happen, right?
But like, tell you a story that I forgot.
But like, I mean, you've been in corporate culture, and so have I. And I think one of the things about corporate culture for me, I got complacent. I'm not going to say I was happy, but it was what I did. It was mundane. It was you get up, you go to work. Like then you have coffee, like and then you sit down in front and you check email, and then you go to lunch, and then you do like a little bit of work, and then you go to the water cooler, right? Like and then, and you get into this mundane little thing of whatever it is. How long were you in the grind? Because obviously you've experienced this to know you don't want to anymore.
Yeah, I definitely had moments where I was okay with the grind, and then it's just slowly started creeping in more and more, this fire in my belly to get out of the grind. And so I would say I started in my first corporate job back in 2007. Before that, I was like going to school, and then I was chasing a career in the music industry, doing a lot of grunt work, going on the road with band, and like doing, trying to chase this music business, who knows what artist management type of a career. And then I decided I needed to pay my bills. And so I was like, all right, stop farting around, Taylor, like go learn a technical skill. And that was in about 2005. And I decided to go, because I got an English major degree, and a French minor. And I didn't want to be an English teacher or professor or anything like that. So I always loved writing.
But what? So is the English major just because you like writing?
I guess I just didn't know what to do.
That's the thing. Like, do any of us especially at that age? Like, because you and I,
age, no,
we're in
nobody
the same.
Does.
We're in the same generation, basically.
Yeah.
And in that regard, just like my last guest, like we were told, you go to college. Like that's what you do. You go to high school, you go to college, then you get a job, right? And nobody said but it matters what you do in college. So you went for English and writing. I went for liberal arts, just general, whatever, whatever. And then as long as I have this piece of paper, I'll be fine. And then we got out and oh, nope.
Kind of that way. It was like, then I was like, well, what kind of job do I get? And I think at some point I changed my major a lot. Like I actually, my freshman year, we'll take a step back in time, Jason. Or Agent Palmer. Am I supposed to call you Agent Palmer on this thing?
Either.
I like Agent Palmer. If we take a step back in time, I went to music school at first. I was, again, what I really wanted to do when I was young was music.
But what? Like writing, composing, editing, producing?
I wanted to write songs and be a country singer. So I went to Nashville and I went to school for music. And then I got depression. And so I moved back home, and then I didn't know what I wanted to do. I got better. I got well. And then I was like, well, I'm just going to get a degree, right? So I ended up finishing, and I tried a few things. At first I was like, oh, I'm going to go get a degree in French. And I went and studied abroad, and I really liked it. But then practically I was like, well, I don't want to be a French teacher. So maybe I loved writing. And I thought this is funny. This is actually going to come full circle. At some point in that time, I thought I can be a copywriter. Okay. And when I would explain that to people around me, friends, boyfriends, whatever, they were always like, what does that mean? I was like, like an ad agency. Like I'll write the cool taglines. Okay. And all of my friends would laugh at me and just be like, what are you... Like people do that, right?
Yeah.
And so...
but this was before Mad Men. So like it didn't have that like common knowledge thing.
I guess so. And I guess I just knew that it existed, right? And so then I guess I graduated and I just decided to continue to chase the music business career because I got introduced to a singer-songwriter who wrote for a lot of pretty big country stars, and I went to work for him at his recording studio, and I just did all the grunt work, like I did merchandising, like I put fan mail in the mail.
Okay.
I went on the road with them and hauled all their gear around and got the money at the end of the show and stuff like that. And after a little while of that, that's when I thought I need some sort of a technical skill and I need to pay my bills.
See, so I'll go back on you real quick. So one of the things, and I tell this story a lot more than my parents. My parents like to tell this story about how I complained about taking a psychology course in college, and I came home and complained that I had nothing to write about. My parents absolutely loved that because I had a very fairly normal childhood, and but that they love that story, right? I like to harken back to the fact that like I could never write any good poetry because while I was sad and sometimes depressed, like any teenager is, like nothing really bad ever happened. Like both my parents are still together, and they both still I have a good relationship with the both of them. Like all those things. Like I'm never gonna be like a good artist because there's never been any strife. There's never been anything wrong, right?
Darkness to you.
Yeah, there's no darkness there, and like
I wrote some really dark poetry.
Well, I mean, I think maybe all of us did. I don't know. I mean, I do want to revisit some of that stuff. I'm sure it's all cringe all the way from the first forced rhyme to the last, right? But I do wonder, like, is that necessary? Like, I mean, if you had kept your depression in Nashville, like imagine the songs you could have written.
Oh God, I mean, maybe I'd be really famous.
I don't know. I mean, do you still want?
It's possible.
Do you still want to write? Like, is that I mean, you do a lot, okay, and you have a family, and I'm not going to take away from any of that. But if I could give you like 3 weeks off and say, go write an album, like, is that a thing that's still in you?
Yes, but it's more so a book.
Okay.
So. Well, okay, I will say that I do miss doing my music.
Like just singer, songwriter, guitar stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I never was good at composing. This is where I got stuck. I can't compose crap, but I'm good with the words.
All right.
And I had a hard time with anything other than the words and singing it. But like instruments, I've never been very good at.
Okay.
And so I always felt a little bit, like where can I take it? And I guess, I don't know. I never got good enough at guitar to do it. And then, I don't know, life just changed and priorities changed after that. And for some reason, I then decided to start focusing more on the business aspect of music and not as much the music itself.
And so that gets you to more of the business acumen, which gets you into the corporate wheel, so to speak?
I suppose. So I went back to school, and that's when I went to graduate school and started studying mass communications. And at the time it was called new media.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's like 2005. I went back to school and started studying new media. And I had this professor who was going to teach me how to do new media, right? And what did that mean? It meant like build a website.
Okay.
I built a website in Flash.
Oh God, I don't miss those days at all. I don't because here's the thing, like I started my agency in 2008, and I was it started with HTML, and then I went straight to WordPress once I found out about WordPress. But there was like a 6-month period in there where it was like, I'm going to build a Flash website. Oh, yeah. God.
I remember I thought Flash was like cool.
It was the
and
be all
really
end all.
Hard.
Well,
too,
yeah.
But cool.
Well, I don't know if you were watching them, but like I remember of that era, like Homestar Runner cartoons on the internet were all done in Flash. So like there were these
the Quiznos sub one.
No, not that one.
Quiznos snobs, they got a pepper bar. Remember that? Wasn't that Flash? I mean, it looked like it.
Well, I mean,
shitty.
But Flash was supposed to be like the great equalizer. Like we could do animation, right? Like we could do websites too, but like we could do anime. Like, you want to do a movie? Here you go. Like here's all the pieces.
Yeah.
They don't tell you like, yeah, here's all the pieces, but like you need to have artistic talent. You need to be able to 3D render and model. And oh, by the way, you should really learn to code too, because it's not just as simple as moving stuff.
Yeah. It was hard. I didn't like Flash, but this is when I started getting into dorkdom mode. So I learned how to, code a little bit, right? Like basic HTML stuff. I started learning about CSS and style sheets and stuff like that. And I never really felt like I could be technical before that moment in my life. I'd always felt like I'm just a creative.
Okay.
I'm good at writing, and I don't know how to be technical, and I don't ever think I will be, and I was not confident in that at all. And then I started learning and thought, oh, I can do this, even to the point where this is the dorkdom. We had a Halloween party. Like because I'm a nerd, I was the president of the grad club at the school. So I helped put together grad club parties.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Things like that.
I mean, look, you're talking to a guy that for 2, 3, 4 semesters, maybe somewhere between 3 and 5 semesters was president of the campus activities board as an undergrad, right? Like we've all, I think some of us have always been there.
Yeah, it was just like, I'm going to be involved and lead stuff.
Yes.
So we had this Halloween, this is a random story, but we had this Halloween party. And most people just show up in, your normal Halloween costumes, whether it's a scary costume or a pumpkin or a bear or who knows what, right?
Yeah.
I dressed up as a style sheet. So I literally wore all white clothing.
Okay.
I got a white t-shirt and white pants, and I took markers and I wrote CSS code to look like a butterfly, sort of a thing.
Okay.
And it was very dorky, and everyone at the party was like, what are you?
That's...
And then I had to explain it. They're like, okay. So it's just funny how you fall into things sometimes that you don't expect.
Well, I mean, it's all I look back and realize that I may have dodged a bullet by being just liberal arts, because things change so fast from then in the early aughts to now that like anything I went to college for that wasn't classical, I don't know, education, right? The regular sociology, the psychology, the biology, all of the standard stuff, that's fine, right? Mm-hmm. But even the gender and communications class I took junior year, completely not relevant anymore, right? Like the mass communication, completely not relevant, because the mass communication class I took was focused on print, which is dead. I mean, it's not dead. You can still get. It's
don't
dying.
Say that.
It's dying. Okay, it's It's got a slow death, and it will probably die after we do. But for now, let's just say it's on life support.
Right.
And so all the things I learned outside of the classroom, you would go back to being the president of the campus, being involved, right? Like learning how to manage. You're president of a club in a college, and it means almost nothing, right? Like you put that stuff on your resume when you're right out of college because you don't have anything else to put on it.
Right. It shows you did stuff.
It means absolutely nothing, but the things you learned there Like the
relationships.
It's relationships. I learned Robert's Rules of Orders real well back then, and now that I'm starting to get on some boards, like it all comes back to you. Like real quick, like, oh, now I remember why I used to suspend this shit when I was president, because I don't need this. Like, we can all come to a consensus and talk. We don't need a first and a second, or don't need a motion and a second when there's 7 of us. Like, there's 7 of us.
7.
How much order do you need for 7 of us? Like, we had to re-amend the bylaws so that 7 was a quorum. Like, I mean, just ridiculous stuff. But all that external stuff helps going forward much more.
Totally. Well, one of the things I really focused on was building relationships with my professors at that time. And like that actually catapulted me into the corporate world. And I remember when I got my first job working at a software company and they told me the salary, and I was just like mind blown that I could make that much money, you know?
Like, so hold on.
Because I was making like $10 an hour, you know, schlepping it.
Well, that's true. I do know that my first professional gig, it took me a while. Like, I was in retail for 7 years. It took me a while to get that first corporate gig. But that first corporate gig, while it made about the same amount that my retail gig did, it was a guaranteed for like for me, the big thing was like, wait, you mean I don't have to hope that next week I get 36 hours on the schedule? Like, I'm just guaranteed like, you know, when you're young, like, benefits are not that important to you as they are now. But that first realization that, like, no, as long as I have this job, I have 40 hours a week. Like, I don't, none of this nights and weekends anymore. Like, I get to live I guess a normal life. That was like huge. And then
totally.
And then you get there and it's just weird. Like, cuz getting
it was actually great for me for a long time.
Now here's the question. The new question for anyone who's not a boomer, which is, how many jobs did you have? Like, so before you started your agency last year, how many and I'm going to say how many, because, you know, obviously you can move up and down the corporate ladder. How many different organizations did you work for? Like, ballpark it.
Like in my corporate, like in my real professional career.
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking about when I was a lifeguard at the age of 16.
No.
Because, I mean, I did a lot of schlepping at jobs in my younger years, right?
Well, but here's the thing. While you're thinking about that, I will say that everyone I meet that has a little more empathy towards their employees or their coworkers is someone who was also in the service industry as a teenager. And the people that are kind of like the worst bosses ever are the people that just look, we're not going to make this a wealth conversation, but the people that usually can afford not to have the service industry job are fairly well off to begin with. And by not being in fast food or retail, you miss out on a growth mechanism because I
really think you do.
Yeah. You learn so much. I wouldn't want to go back. Like, I just don't know if I have the mentality to work in retail anymore, or even in fast food, but like the lessons you learned there and the humility, like, oh my God.
Totally. Yeah.
Just off the charts.
I 100% agree with you. I think that kids who are well off and well-to-do, whose parents don't need them to work, I still think should go work.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's just, you get a lot of life skills there. You do learn a lot. I have tremendous empathy because, like, I've been there and I've been the one that customers have been rude to for no good reason. You know, like, I was a lifeguard. I waited tables, which, by the way, I was terrible at. I'm so clumsy. I was awful as a waitress. Like, I got the worst tips ever. I was terrible. Even though I'm friendly, like, I was so bad that I made such terrible money as a waitress. So I also worked at coffee shops. So yeah, I agree. Like, you learn a lot through that. So the number of jobs, I'm trying to think. So here's here's kind of the interesting thing. The first company that I went to in my professional career, I stayed at for 9 years.
Okay.
And I did several different roles at that company.
Yeah, that's why I asked for companies, the number of companies and not the number of jobs. Because I was in a company for my first professional gig was also 9 years. Actually, I would have had 10, except I was unceremoniously fired. But I also had like, I don't know, 3 or 4. My job description was fairly similar throughout, but my title changed time and time again.
Okay. Well, I have a question. How would you consider this? So the first place I was at, I'm like sitting here literally writing on paper trying to count, because the first, I guess I've been a quote professional for 15 years. Okay. And the first half of that was at this one company, but it was really 2 companies, because the first company I started working at got acquired and I stayed on. We got acquired by a much larger company. A lot of people left. There was a mass exodus, and I looked at it as an opportunity to learn what it was like to work at a huge company.
Sure. Yeah.
So I stayed, and I just kept growing and getting promoted and doing different jobs there. So I had, within 9 years, probably 5 or 6 different jobs. I kept just working my way up, right? And doing different things and learning different things. After that, I left, and that's when I started bouncing around. I went into startup mode.
Okay.
And you bounce around in startup mode.
Now, do you like the hustle of startup mode more? Like, because obviously there's something different between that 9 years, regardless of the titles. Like, that 9 years is very different than startup mode, where there's hustle's like the worst word to use, but it's the only word I've got like that. That's so different, right? Like, when you're in corporate communications, unless something's on fire or broken or somebody did something illegal, you've got some time to structure your messaging. But in the startup mode,
you don't. There's never any time for anything.
No, none.
Yeah. So I think I do like it. I think I'm a masochist.
I mean, well, hold on. It's not painful.
No,
I guess that's the other thing. Like, well, I shouldn't say that. I can understand why there's a bit of masochism with it, but like, it's not really that painful. Like, you know what you're getting. I guess no one signs on for like startup mode without knowing.
High risk, high reward. Yeah. You do know what you're getting into. Okay. So here's the thing. So after I left the 9 years, I went to a startup. I was there for like 8 months. 8 months felt like 3 years in startup world. It was the first startup I went to. Okay. So I had no experience, and I started learning very fast about how a startup works, how you get funding, how you build quick, how you fail faster, like all these hustle terms, right? I started learning and started figuring out. I also learned very quickly that you just have to kind of learn how to make stuff up a little bit and fly by the seat of your pants and learn how to do stuff that you weren't expecting to learn how to do very, very fast.
Okay.
So it's an incredible opportunity to grow very quickly. It can also be very stressful. That 8 months, like I said, it felt like about 2 to 3 years, both in stress and learning.
Okay.
So it's easy to start bouncing around, because there's just a lot of volatility, right? You go from this thing that feels safe into this thing where it's exciting, and at the same time you're like, are we gonna get paid?
Okay. Yeah.
So that happens. Then I I was there for 8 months. I got out because I saw some writing on the wall.
Okay.
I have a good intuition, like this ability to call it when it's about to get bad and you need to leave.
Okay.
And so I did. And then I went to another company. This one was more like a 10-year-old startup.
Okay.
It was still, and there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
There's a lot, especially like tech companies and agencies too. that have been around a while. They seem like they got their shit together. And they're really very much still like an early startup in a lot of ways. Like there's a very lack of process. There's a lot of, weird startup-y like politics sometimes that you don't expect that are different than corporate politics.
Kind of like the founder's still here, even though he's not the CEO, and we still kind of listen to what he has to say, but maybe not weird stuff.
It can be that. Okay. It also can just be weird stuff in terms of like uncertainty, and you're not sure who to trust because you're not really sure who's in the founder's ear the most, and a little bit like of drama, you know?
Okay, so here's my question, right?
Yeah.
From our first networking to the onboarding, you have been you haven't beat around the bush with me at all.
No.
And does that come from not wanting to deal with that yourself from what you learned when you were jumping around in the startups of not having to politic? Like, no, I mean, I'm telling you, like, cause you've always shot straight, right? Like, and that's, I do too. Like I think one of the things that made me unhireable for people that weren't you, people that weren't Taylor, was that I was not willing to lie for a job. And
I agree. I think I even told you that was maybe why you were getting, shut down.
Yeah. It's so hard because like, I don't have a good memory. Okay. I don't have a good memory. So lying means I have something else to remember. Like the truth is always easy to remember because you either remember it or you don't,
or
right?
you just don't. Yeah.
And if you have to remember a lie, you're now adding another layer, and I can't be bothered. And I have to make it up. So look, I've been writing a lot of corporate speak, like landing page type stuff, blogs as far as like opinion pieces, editorials, and maybe a few like nonfiction, like here's the history of X and Y and Z. I haven't written a lot of fiction. I don't know if it's left me. Because like you, I didn't write a lot of songs, but I wrote a lot of poetry back then. And it was all fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I have it anymore. I don't have the ambition, the drive, the inspiration, whatever. But like, I don't want to have to come up with a lie. Like, it's just so hard. Like, I feel like the truth is just easier.
It is. It's better.
So
a lot of people lie, and I agree with you. It's like I also have a bad memory. So first off, I like your perspective on lying, because you have a bad memory, and I'm like, yeah, me too. But that's a good reason not to lie. Yeah. No, I just I think there's a couple of things. I think yes, I learned a lot about what not to do and what I said to myself, I'm never going to do that at my company. Okay, never is a strong word, but like I'm going to try my best not to have that crap at my company.
Yep.
Right? And so that is one thing. I also think I don't know. For some reason, at some point in my career, a flip was switched and I became confident in myself.
So hold on.
Yeah.
So is this confidence, is this switch flipped in the middle of the 9 years in corporate, or is it after when you're in start? Like where's the confidence come in?
I think it happened before I switched over to startup.
Okay.
I think it happened more towards the end of my time at the large company, where I think I had realized I had done this enough that I actually knew what I was talking about, and I finally believed it.
Okay.
And I think that I needed that confidence to go into startup world.
Okay. All right.
You know?
I mean, I like that, though, because I feel like, this is the most egotistical, one of the most egotistical things I will ever say, but one of the
You're an asshole.
Sometimes.
I didn't ask you if we can cuss on your show.
Yeah,
sorry.
no, it's fine. One of the things towards the end of my tenure at my first and longest corporate gig was that I knew how to call. I knew the bullshit other people were spewing, and I didn't have the patience for it. Now, look, there was a house cleaning. I was one of half the staff of a staff of 13 that was removed from the situation. But like, one of the things about it was some of the coworkers that got to stay, I was just happy not to have to work with them anymore. Like, I know that you're getting your I know where you're getting your information from. Like, you have no original ideas. I am reading the same articles you are, and you're just regurgitating them. You're not learning anything, right? And it's just like, this isn't going to work for us. I know you read the article. It worked for an organization that has 5 times the budget we do. It's not going to work for us. But you go ahead. Like, one of the things that my former boss, who was fired with me, got used to me saying my piece and shutting up. That's all I want. Taylor, you're wrong, but I'll do it anyway, because that's the direction you've chosen. I'm going to tell you I don't like it, but that's that confidence only came towards the end, right? Like, so I understand, like, you have to get there, because I think early on, I guess it's the bright lights of the big city. You're just really excited to have that job from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And so when somebody says, can you run this report? You go, yeah, sure, absolutely. And then, can you run this campaign? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Can you write this? Yeah, sure, absolutely. And it takes a while for you to figure out how it works. So you can go, I have a different of opinion. I have another idea, or I have something else, right? And I always got in trouble for saying no. Now, I always had a backup. Like, no, we should do this. But I always started with no, because it was, it's not lying. Like, I don't have to, why should I have to be creative to come up with a way to not hurt your feelings for a bad idea and be like, okay, how many words can I use to say no without actually saying no? No.
Well, that's an art.
I don't have it, by the way. I'm just,
there is, that is something that it is an art to say no kindly.
Yes.
That builds trust.
Yeah.
Whether that's with your team or your clients or a friend, this rule applies in life.
Yes.
There's a way, I think, to say no in a nice way that you're confident in your answer. You're speaking your truth and speaking your mind, but you're not tearing the other person down. And that was something that I think I was so tired of at a lot, and that I saw happen at a lot of different jobs that I had. People just being jerks.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily, because they have some big ego. They want to be the one to impress the CEO. And I just, like you see out through the bullshit. I saw through the bullshit. It started eating away at me more and more and more. And the other thing that I think finally got me over the edge was just like, just a bunch of, BS, people wasting their time in a bunch of meetings that didn't actually do anything for anyone, but they made their egos feel good because I guess they made them feel important. And then a lot of like indecision happens at companies large and small, where people just can't ever make a decision and go with anything, and therefore nothing ever happens. And that drives me bonkers. Well, make a decision, do something. If it's the wrong decision, course correct.
Yeah.
But make a decision. And I don't know if you picked up on this in working with me, but like, I make decisions fast. Yeah. And they're not always right. But at least it's something.
So agency life's slightly different because you're on the clock and nobody wants to pay you to do nothing, right? Like clients are paying you for your opinion or for you to do something, but they're not paying you to just sit around, have a coffee and think about it for an hour. Like that's that's not going to be a thing, right? And,
yeah. You have to produce.
And I understand that, but I also like the idea that like, it's a question I asked at every interview I had, and I didn't like a lot of the answers, which was, "Are you okay with failure?" Like, because the standard interview is like, biggest strengths, biggest weakness, whatever. And everybody always asks, like, "Do you have any questions at the end?" Like, yeah, are you okay if I screw up? And that's always my biggest, because I'm okay with that. Like, my favorite example, and I only got this far in a few interviews. I think I actually told you this the first time we spoke at that first initial networking thing, because I had just done it. Was I had been spending like for 3 months. I had scheduled promo tweets for my back catalog of blogs and podcasts. And it was going out, and it was like 35 spread out tweets over 2 accounts to promote the back catalog. And then I stopped for a month, and nothing happened to my numbers, which tells me it wasn't worth it in the first place. So I got to come up with something else. And I just stopped. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay. Like, I'll admit what I was doing didn't work. Was it wrong? That's a different discussion, but it did not work to at least drive traffic, which is what I wanted it to do. Mm-hmm. And I said that, and I was like, well, I mean, I guess I failed, because I'm the one who came up with the strategy to do that in the first place. It didn't work. I stopped. I moved on. And I always like to ask if people were all right with that, because there's a lot of companies that pay you to be right or shut up. Mm-hmm. Like that, or that's the feeling, right? Mm-hmm. And so I always asked if how they felt about being wrong. You had no problem with it. Like, you were like, well, just fix it.
I can't remember, because my memory's bad. Did you ask me that?
I did. You said just fix it.
What did I say?
You said just fix it. Like that, just fix it. Like, okay, you broke it. Can you like fix it or make it better, whatever. Like, don't dwell on the fact that it didn't work. Because the thing is, if you're afraid to make the mistake, you're never going to take the chance, and you probably won't be successful at all. Like, you could, I mean, you don't start. I started an agency because I actually don't know why I started the agency. That is a different psychoanalysis for that. But you started the agency that you are running right now, knowing it could fail, but you weren't held back from that chance. Like, it might not work. Like, well, but it won't work if you don't try, right? Like you.
Yeah, I knew I would live with regret if I never tried, and I didn't want that.
And so what's next? Because you are, and I've only worked alongside you for a few months. I think you're still in startup mode, because you're working on all these other people's things. You're working on your stuff, the business, and your personal brand. And like, there's other things that pop up all the time. Like,
I have a lot of ideas.
But isn't that, I mean, I guess, for certain people, and I fall into this category too, like, if you leave me alone for long enough, I'll come up with 4 different blog post ideas, 2 different guests, and another thing I should tell to a friend who's working on a thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm full of ideas. Never have enough time for anything.
Yeah. That's actually something I'm struggling with more now, is I do have a lot of ideas, and I'm having to temper what's realistic. Right.
How do you do that?
Well, it's hard. I'll be honest.
because while you're tempering your ideas, you're coming up with new ideas.
Yeah, I am.
It's a never-ending cycle.
It isn't. I mean, that's the life of a creative, right? Like, sometimes my mind is in La La Land, to be honest, where like I'm a dreamer.
Okay.
And I'm dreaming about, this could be great, and this could be great, and this could be great. And then I have to come back to center into reality of what's actually feasible and what do I actually want to do. Because I don't want to work 80 hours a week. Like, I want balance.
Yeah.
So I do struggle with, well, how much do you grow?
Now, is part of that because some of your ideas are, like, intense? Like, we're not talking about, oh, I'm just, we're talking about, like, I want to write a book, which,
yeah, that's intense.
That's not light.
Exactly. It's not a small thing, It's like 1 minute I'm thinking about the book that's been in my head for a long time that I've started putting down on paper, and it's just disorganized. Like, there's a lot of the thought there, but it needs organization. And then, I'll also be thinking about, okay, well, we're going to launch this new service line that's like subscription based, design and SEO and podcasting, right? Okay, so that's a different thing. And then at the same time, I'm also thinking about, well, I should probably do my next TED Talk, and then I'm like, oh, wait, I don't want to work all the time either.
I'll tell you what, one of the hardest things for me has been trying to justify to myself the work-life balance thing, because I had a 40-hour-a-week job, did podcast producing to the tune of like 20 hours a week back then. Not my show, but other people's, right? And time zones and staying up till 1 or 2, like, and just always being busy and always having ideas for other people. And just, that was fun. I don't know how I did it, but it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I don't want to work for, like you, I don't want to work for 80 hours, but I keep having these ideas. And obviously I can't do all the things.
Yeah, I'm just getting better at saying no, you know? I mean, you'll even notice this sometimes, like, I just don't respond to your email as fast as you'd probably want me to.
Well, I mean, but, and I have learned this. People want Taylor. Like, I may be helpful and I may give a good, like, I may have a good idea in a meeting or in an email. People want you. I mean, and that's, I think, maybe it changes the way you sell the business, but right now, people are buying you.
It's true. And that's, I know it's true. And that is something that I'm happy with. I appreciate very deeply the relationships that I have with our clients. And, one part of me thinks, well, I just want to keep providing this white glove service where, like, you really get my brain on your brand, right? And your stuff. And I have a team of other people who help to support it. But, like, you're talking to me too.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to just hand you off. But I also know that there are certain things we could do that don't require me. And that's some of the stuff I'm starting to think about, like, because I want other people to be able to grow and to lead out and to build these other things that other people on the team are very capable of doing. And in my opinion, can really help the small business owner, the smaller nonprofit that doesn't have a gigantic budget like a big corporate place does, but still needs good marketing, So, like,
and it helps that you have some time to write your book.
Right. Yeah. But I do want to get into a place where more of my time can be spent on being the big thinker and the big idea person. I can walk into a room and walk into a meeting and give a lot of big ideas. And I've just started to learn and become confident that that's a gift of mine. And I didn't always have that gift. I had to grow it and I had to nurture it. And it's come over time.
I've been accused of being too far ahead of my friends in their own projects. Like, enough times to know that I can see I might miss a few middle steps, but I can see where this is going.
Yeah.
You have to either establish that that's what you're going to say, or people have to know you, because otherwise, come on, hold your horses.
Right. But again, and I say that also recognizing that there are, like, I'm not necessarily the best executor.
Okay.
And that's why there are other people here now too, because I can again, it's about being realistic with strengths and weaknesses and why you need to form a body of people who work well together in different ways to create the things, right? So like, yeah, like people buy Taylor. This sounds conceited to say. So I don't want to come off as someone.
It sounds, it sounds that way, but like I've sat in the meetings, like I know, like I'm not invisible in those meetings, but at the same time, if you said the same thing I did, the response would be tenfold.
Yeah. Well, it's just they know me, well, I think
that's part of it, but right now, you and your brand are you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, here's the real question. You've started a business. You have a family. You did a TED Talk. You tried the music. Like you did chase some dreams, and obviously some have come true. And discounting the book, which I feel like is inevitable. Like you will eventually start putting like a page down here and a page down there. Like what's the one pie in the sky thing? Like what's the one thing? Like you gonna go climb Everest? Like what's the one big thing that like top of mind right now that's next?
Oh, that's a good question. The book really is one of the big things, but I will also say, I think that certain things have happened in my life that have also changed my perspective on this. And I am a little bit less hungry now to go and be like, go, go, go all the time, right? But I do want to go live abroad more. And I don't know when that will be, but that is something that I would like to do. I don't want to climb Everest. Maybe I used to cycle a lot. So here's one.
Well, get out of the mountains and it'll be fine.
Right. And even I ski a lot. But I don't have this dream of like, I've got to be the best skier. I just get out there and
have fun.
Kind of easy street, have fun, enjoy it, like enjoy the fresh air. I'm not trying to like get better and do crazy ass jumps and shit like that, and break my legs. Cause I'm also realistic where I'm like, I'm getting older. I got bad knees, so I think it's, continuing to grow in the, creative field. And I don't know, here's one thing I'll say. And this is something that's a passion project, I think, in my podcasting and my writing, and why there is a focus on the personal brand and thought leadership and speaking.
Yep.
Is I want to be a voice for people to be okay with saying the stuff that's on everyone's minds that most people are afraid to say. And I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does.
But there's something in me, and I can't tell you why, that feels passionate about helping other people by relating to them and helping them understand that, a lot of societal pressures and fear and shame and judgment that we all feel are normal feelings. Everybody feels. You're not alone. And this is how you deal with it. So just like you said, I think how I told you, okay, so you failed, so fix it.
Yeah.
I think that is something that people get hung up along. They can't accept the failure, so therefore they can't fix the failure.
It should not be understated that Taylor took her shot. She can lament her lack of talent in composing music, but she chased that dream. Maybe not to success or failure, but she went after it. It led to where she is now, in a way, and so I'm left wondering what it is I've chased or not chased. I'm narrowing down my what do I want to be or what do I want to do when I grow up, and in many ways, it's almost never about me. I really enjoy being a producer and editor, so perhaps that's where I will focus my efforts for now, but you take your shot and you move on. Just like I can't be bothered to remember the lie, I don't want to lament the things I didn't explore, or for that matter, couldn't explore. Maybe one day I'll help produce a multi-million-dollar feature film, but I won't lament the fact that right now all I can do is help a friend out on a shoestring budget because I enjoy doing the thing. I enjoy the process. Maybe I just enjoy helping people too. So I ask you this. Do you know what you want to do when you grow up? I think, as discussed in this episode, it can change as you add more birthday candles to your cake, but we all have more growing up to do, don't we? No matter what, I hope none of us ever stop searching for meaning and purpose. Thanks for listening to The Palmer Files, episode 66. As a reminder, all links are available in the show notes, and now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can tweet me at Agent Palmer and this show at The Palmer Files. You can find more information on Taylor at tshank.com, that's tshank.com, or follow her on Instagram at tshanksoars, that's SOARS. Email can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com. All right, Taylor, do you have one final question for me?
Yeah, you've asked me a lot about my goals and things I aspire to do, but what about you? Like, what is it that drew you to doing what you do? And what is something that you want to do? Like, I've been trying to get under your skin a little bit and understand what's going to make you tick.
I will say this. The unemployment taught me that I will never truly stop working, because the blog and the podcast endured through all that time. And there were moments when I went, if I didn't have to find a job, this is the fucking life, right? Like, I enjoy consuming things and sharing my opinions about them. And I enjoy having conversations like this with you and other people and strangers and friends alike, right? I'm okay with all of that, and I enjoy the editing process. And we could all be better promoting our own stuff, so it's not a surprise that I could do more. But like, as far as what else there is, as a blogger, you always get the question like, "You gonna write a book?" Like, I mean, no. Not unless I have an unless I get the inspiration for if you take certain tags or tags specifically, right? Like of this author or this artist or this series, right? And you put all of my stuff together. Maybe I have a small novel that I've already written about a topic, right? But that was never the intent. I didn't start out to collect that. That just kind of happened over time. You do something for 10 years and you collect a lot of things. I do think that I'm coming around on the idea of consulting to a certain level. And I don't mean like monetarily. I mean like that I have the confidence to do it. Because it's like my mother, when I was, I don't know, a toddler, started her business, and she's been a consultant for basically my entire life. I don't know what a consultant does. I have a general idea that my mother does internal marketing, But as far as being a consultant, until, I don't know, the last 5 or 6 years, I didn't know what that meant still. And I still have trouble putting my brain around it. Like, generally speaking, I have trouble putting my brain around marketing because it's just so vast. And I think consulting's that similar thing, but consulting's in that vein of like teaching / coaching, but it's not, but it is, but it's also having the conversation in the right way. And I enjoy helping people. And I think one of the things that I learned being unemployed while networking is I'm all right answering the questions. I'm okay with it. Like I don't have to be publicly thanked because I networked with somebody who was having technical issues with their Zoom and I helped them troubleshoot it just because I happen to know a little bit about tech, right? Or like they asked me a question about Twitter's algorithm or the new Google search thing or whatever, and I just helped. I'm all right with it. So I guess there's a part of that I guess will coalesce into something, but I'm horrible at selling myself. So those scenarios only happen when I'm put in a room because you put me there as my boss, or I reached out to network with somebody and they asked me a question that I can answer. So there's a balance there, but I feel like it falls into that same brand of, I'm learning by doing, so I can easily dole out some of this advice based on experience.
Yeah. And it's part of why I've put you in things that'll stretch you a little bit.
And I'm all right with that. Like I also know that like there's a ton of stuff. There's a ton about myself I don't know. Like and I'm all right to find out where I sink and where I swim. Mainly because I've learned that I'm a little more well-rounded than I thought I was originally. And I've also started the chip on my shoulder has grown. Being unemployed for so long, not because nobody wanted me, but because everybody was like, oh, you can't, being well-rounded is not a good thing. Right. Like and it wasn't 50-50. I'd say it was probably only about a quarter of all the people were more in line with you that like, oh, you're flexible, you're well-rounded, you'll be able to do a lot. But the majority of people I networked with were like, yeah, you need to specialize in something. And the chip just gets bigger because I'm reading books that I wouldn't normally read, or I'm trying to expand my knowledge base so I know a little bit more. And I want to help other people through like the things I've learned. Like, cause I'm reading these books for myself, but I can also learn lessons that will benefit you or somebody else. Right. And I'm not learning all this stuff just for me. That would be a waste, right? Like, the going through the motions, the whole Twitter thing of like it not working out, like all of these things are okay for me, but they end up being really good lessons to learn if I can share them with like 5 people, 10 people, whoever, right? And so I think I just want to help people. And I think I've also learned that small business and nonprofit are idealisms I can wrap my brain around. I have a hard time talking to somebody whose number one goal is money. Mainly because my number one goal has never been money. And I know I'm privileged to say that as someone who was lucky enough to save and make a decent white collar living. But I've sat in a room with some people that are like, what can you do for my bottom line? I'm like, I can help tell your story, but I don't know what I can do for your bottom line. Like that's my brain doesn't go there first. Like, are you communicating well? Do people know what you do? Like those questions, as opposed to like, well, how much can we get for this? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
My brain doesn't go there.
I don't like that either. I also have learned how to have that conversation.
Okay.
In a way where you steer it back to what gets you there. I get it that you're worried about your bottom line. Here's what I think you need to do, and I'm still going to shoot you straight about what I think will get you there, knowing that that's the only thing you care about. And here's one other thing I'll learn that I've seen enough now at this point in my professional career to understand why we encounter people that way in the corporate world. Everybody always has someone breathing down their neck about money.
Okay.
Right? If it's not, let's say if it's the head of sales is breathing down the marketer's neck, you know why that's happening? It's because
the president's breathing down the director of sales and the board is
the CEO and the board and the investors, right? There's always someone higher up that's breathing down their neck. And so I actually think this is a bit of a problem with corporate culture.
Yeah.
Is that there's just always someone breathing down someone else's neck about money. And that creates the environment where people are so worried all the time about money that they often make bad decisions because they're just trying to get a release valve for a little while opened up to say, stop breathing down my neck for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, and they're
all just trying to take a paycheck home and provide for their families. So it's like there's a lot to it. There's a lot of layers.
Yeah, I've also seen it be like leveraging today because I need the release now versus saving it for the long term because I need the release now. Like I get that too. But it's one of the things that changes when you move into smaller businesses and nonprofits because it's about the mission and it's about the service and it's about something else. And the conversations that we get to have when you're not talking about that big corporate thing are much more engaging and better.